I remember the sound of rain on the window. I remember the smell of his cologne, the good one, the expensive one I had bought him. He was folding a shirt into a designer bag. Slowly, carefully, like he had been rehearsing this moment. He told me he had found someone who actually sees him. He said it like I should understand. He said we did not need a messy divorce. He would just leave, keep things informal. That way he could keep his bonuses. I did not cry. I watched him zip that bag, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not grief. Something quieter than that. He had spent 6 months lying to my face. He thought I had not noticed. He thought quiet meant unaware. If you've ever given everything to someone and watched them treat it like nothing, you already know how this feels. You know that specific heaviness, the kind that does not make you loud. It makes you still. Subscribe. This story has one of the most satisfying endings I have told. I do not want you to miss it. My name is Clara. Julian and I had been married for 9 years. We lived in a bungalow in a quiet neighborhood with good light in the mornings. I worked in financial compliance. That detail matters. Remember it. Julian was a senior account manager at a mid-sized investment firm. He made good money. He also spent good money, but the spending had changed in the past year. He started wearing slim-cut jackets he had no business wearing. He got a haircut that belonged on someone 10 years younger. I noticed. I did not say anything right away. I watched. That was always my way. I am not someone who moves fast on instinct. I move slowly on evidence. The bungalow was ours together. We had built equity in it over 7 years. Julian handled most of the visible finances. I handled the quiet ones, the spreadsheets, the account summaries, the flagged transactions. Power dynamic? On the surface, he looked like he ran things. Underneath, I had always been the one paying attention. What nobody saw was the folder on my desktop. I had named it Q3 Review. Boring name. Intentional. Inside it were 6 months of bank statements, flagged transactions totaling just over $15,000. Julian had been running personal expenses through a business account, meals at restaurants I had never been invited to, a vintage Vespa, purchased in cash, transferred through our home equity line, designer handbags, plural, a weekend hotel stay in a city he told me was a work conference. I had cross-referenced the dates. There was no conference. I had also found the name, Sophie. She worked at his firm. She was 26. Julian was 44. He had been acting like someone auditioning for a different life. What nobody in that room knew was that I had already made 3 calls. One to my attorney, one to the fraud division of our bank, one to a private email address I had found for Mr. Gerald Sterling, the head of Julian's firm, Sophie's father. I had not sent that last email yet. I was waiting for the right moment. Julian had stopped asking about my work around 8 months before he left. He used to at least pretend. At a dinner party that spring, I mentioned a compliance audit I had led. He laughed. Not a mean laugh. Worse than that. A dismissive one, like I had told a small joke. He turned to the man beside him and changed the subject. My jaw stayed tight the entire drive home. Then there was the Sunday he told me I was too careful, too methodical. He said it like those were character flaws. He said the problem with me was that I always needed proof before I trusted anything. I did not argue. I just filed that sentence away. Then came the night he forgot our anniversary entirely. He came home late, smelling like a restaurant I did not recognize. When I mentioned the date, he said he had assumed we were not doing anything this year. He said it like I was the one who had dropped the ball. I set down my glass. I went to bed. I did not sleep well. By that point, I knew what was happening. I just did not yet know how deep it went. That folder on my desktop kept growing. Then came the night with the bag, the rain, the cologne. He said her name, out loud, in our house. He said Sophie sees him. He said it like an explanation. He picked up the bag. He walked to the door. He said we would keep things informal. I said okay. He paused. I think he expected more from me than that. I said, drive safe. He left. I stood at the window. I watched headlights pull away from the curb. A car had been idling there for 20 minutes. Option B comment trigger. People always say just cut them off and move on. But what do you do when cutting them off means watching them destroy what you built? What would you have done? I am genuinely asking. I did not call anyone that night. I made tea. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I opened the folder. I checked every line again. Not because I needed to, because I wanted to be certain. Every number, every date, every transfer. The home equity line had been accessed 4 times. Total withdrawn, $22,000. $11,000 of that was documented. The rest I had traced through secondary accounts. I printed the full summary. 41 pages. I put them in a plain manila envelope. I labeled it neatly. I slept 6 hours. In the morning, I called my attorney again. We filed the fraud report before noon. I also sent the email to Mr. Sterling. I attached the relevant documents. I kept the email short. Factual, no adjectives, no emotional language. Just dates, amounts, and account numbers. Then I called the detective who had been recommended to me 3 weeks earlier. She was available that afternoon. I made coffee. I waited. They had no idea what was coming. The call came 14 days after Julian walked out. I was making lunch when my phone rang, his name on the screen. I answered. He was at a brunch spot downtown, something with exposed brick and small portions. He said his card had been declined. He said it twice. His voice had that particular pitch of someone trying to stay calm. I told him calmly that I had reported the $15,000 in unauthorized transfers as fraud. The bank had frozen the associated accounts pending review. He went quiet for a moment. Then he started speaking faster. I did not raise my voice. I did not interrupt him. I stood in my kitchen with the phone against my ear. My hand was completely steady. There was a knock at my door. I told Julian I had to go. Detective Reyes was standing on my porch with a notepad and a calm expression. I offered her coffee. She accepted. We sat at the kitchen table with the 41 pages between us. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. A dog barked once somewhere down the street. That was the only sound for a long time. By 2 in the afternoon, Julian's firm was not quiet anymore. Mr. Sterling had called an emergency meeting. By the time Julian arrived at the office, still rattled from the call, the room already knew. The documents I had sent were specific. Account numbers, dates, transfer amounts. Some of those transfers had passed through firm accounts. That was the part Julian had not thought through. He had used business infrastructure to move personal money to his boss's daughter. Sophie was called into a separate room. Julian was escorted to HR. His credentials were suspended before end of business. I heard about most of this later, not from Julian, from my attorney who had received a call from the firm's legal team. They wanted to discuss settlement terms quickly. I was not surprised. Julian called me 4 times that evening. I did not answer the first 3. On the 4th call, I picked up. I gave him exactly one option: sign a full asset relinquishment by noon the following day, or I move forward with criminal fraud charges. I told him the detective had been very thorough. I told him 41 pages was a solid foundation. He asked if I was serious. I said yes. I said nothing else. The silence on his end lasted almost 10 seconds. I let it sit there. I did not fill it. He said he needed time to think. I said he had until noon. He called back at 11:47 the next morning. He had signed. His retirement account split at 60-40 in my favor. His attorney had negotiated small concessions on a few accounts. I accepted them, not because they were fair, because I was finished. There was one moment, sitting in my attorney's office reviewing the final documents, when I felt something I had not expected. Not relief exactly. Something more like exhaustion. I had held this so tightly for so long. I sat there for a few seconds longer than I needed to. Then I signed my name. Months later, Julian was renting a room in his brother's basement. Sophie had moved on. She reportedly told a mutual contact she needed someone more established. I heard that and felt almost nothing. Almost. I converted Julian's old home theater into a glass-blowing studio. I had always wanted to work with my hands. Every Wednesday evening, a group of women comes over. Some of them are rebuilding finances. Some are rebuilding trust in themselves. We do not talk about what happened to us every week. Some nights, we just make things. Imperfect, hot, glowing things. The bungalow still has good light in the mornings. Here is what I want you to take with you. You were not too careful. You were not too quiet. You were not the reason the room went cold. Some people read stability as invisibility. That is their failure of sight, not yours. Second comment trigger, tell me something. If this had been you, would you have done the same thing? Or would you have given them one more chance? Drop it in the comments. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story right now, send it to them. They will know why. If this story gave you that feeling, that specific satisfaction of watching the truth finally land, subscribe, because I have more. Stories about people who were written off and counted out, who then made sure that was the last mistake anyone made. See you in the next one.